Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine for a moment that the world you see around you isn't just out there, something you passively observe, but something you are actively, constantly, moment by moment, creating.
Mm.
What if your thoughts aren't just internal chatter, but like the very substance the universe uses to build itself?
That's a truly striking idea, isn't it? It fundamentally challenges our, conventional understanding of reality.
Right.
It asks us to consider a universe that isn't this fixed external stage, but something,
Yeah,
well, fluid, dynamic, and profoundly responsive to consciousness.
exactly. And that mind-bending concept is right at the heart of what we're diving into today. Welcome to this deep dive into a truly transformative, expansive body of work, one that has quietly influenced millions over decades. The Seth Material, channeled by Jane Roberts.
hmm Our mission here really is to take the stack of sources you provided, the articles, research, notes, and pull out these essential insights.
Yeah, get to the core.
We want to get a grasp on the core philosophy, explore its practical implications, and, give you a bit of a shortcut to understanding a system that's framed by one of the most unique collaborations of the 20th century. It's quite something.
The material itself is just incredibly extensive, and our sources, they really show it provides a comprehensive overview. It presents the philosophy and its application in a way that feels structured, almost like a deliberate path through these really complex ideas.
And over this dive, we are going to explore some truly challenging concepts. I mean, the surprising, vast nature of your own self, the dizzying idea of simultaneous time,
Yeah, that one's tough.
and perhaps most compellingly, practical tools you can potentially use to change your life from the inside out.
So, okay, where did this extraordinary body of work even come from? I mean, how did it begin?
According to the sources, the genesis is actually quite specific. It all started very unexpectedly for Jane Roberts and her husband, Robert Butts, on the evening of September 9, 1963, in Elmira, New York.
And it's really critical to understand Jane Roberts' background here, right? She wasn't someone steeped in mystical traditions or, psychic circles. Our sources really emphasize her as a highly intellectual, published author, a poet, even a science fiction writer.
Mm-hmm.
What jumps out is the clear documentation that she had no prior history of engaging with psychic phenomena before this all started.
That is such an important distinction. This wasn't a case of someone already known as a medium suddenly announcing, hey, I'm receiving messages.
Yeah.
The sources really portray Roberts as someone with strong intellectual rigor and skepticism even.
Yeah, you get that sense.
The documentation highlights her attempts to understand, to analyze even to debunk what was happening to her. She was a writer trying to make sense of an utterly baffling experience. And that, I think, lends this material a unique layer of intellectual honesty.
Right.
It's presented as a documented dialogue, a process of inquiry, rather than just, received dogma.
And the other key figure in this collaboration is, of course, Seth himself.
Yes, Seth is described as a non-physical, energy personality entity. The material portrays this as a direct, sustained collaboration, a deliberate dialogue that unfolded over many, many years between Jane Roberts and this entity.
And Robert Butts' role. Wow, you really can't overstate it, can you?
Oh, absolutely not. He was the anchor, meticulously transcribing thousands upon thousands of hours of these sessions. Without his dedication, just sitting there session after session, taking down every single word. Well, this massive, cohesive body of work simply wouldn't exist in the detailed, accessible form it does today.
The sheer scale is just remarkable. Over 24 books filled with Seth's teachings based on thousands of recorded sessions.
It's a vast, internally consistent philosophical system, not just scattered insights. The volume and detail really suggest a deliberate, expansive communication, not just, fleeting psychic compressions.
Right, and that unique context of its emergence. Robert's initial skepticism and intellectual approach, her documented process of wrestling with the experience, plus Butts' rigorous transcription, it really positions the work as an ongoing intellectual and experiential exploration, running parallel to the channeled content itself. It feels like it invites you to consider, not just blindly accept.
And adding further academic and cultural weight to its legacy, the Yale University Library actually maintains the Jane Roberts Papers archive.
Wow, Yale.
Yeah. This includes her personal journals documenting the process, the original session recordings, her correspondence, manuscripts. The fact that a major academic institution has chosen to preserve this material as a significant historical and cultural artifact really speaks to its impact and how it's viewed beyond just the realm of metaphysics. It lends a certain legitimacy for serious study. you know?
So it emerges from this truly unexpected, intellectually grounded place, meticulously documented. But okay, what kind of mark has it left? What's its lasting influence been?
Well, the Seth Material is widely recognized as absolutely foundational to modern New Age philosophy. Its core ideas, disseminated through Jane Roberts' highly readable books, really brought concepts like channeling, the radical notion that consciousness itself creates reality.
In that core idea again.
Exactly. And the idea of multidimensional existence into broader public awareness long before many other movements really gained traction.
And the sources make it clear it didn't just exist alongside other emerging spiritual ideas. It actually profoundly shaped many that came after it.
Oh, definitely. The concepts were genuinely ahead of their time and, frankly, are still considered quite advanced and complex today.
They really were. And the depth and coherence of the philosophy meant it directly influenced a whole generation of spiritual leaders, authors, personal development teachers. Our sources highlight some really prominent figures who have openly credited Seth's teachings as a primary foundational influence on their own work. Let's go through a few of those mentioned. Louise Hay, author of the hugely influential book You Can Heal Your Life. She's quoted in the sources saying she'd like to see the Seth books become required reading for anyone on their spiritual pathway.
That's an incredibly strong endorsement, isn't it? From someone whose work has reached and helped millions. She describes the information as amazing in-depth information and emphasizes its enduring relevance, saying it's as relevant today as it was in the early 70s.
Wow.
For a figure known for practical healing and affirmations, her strong recommendation suggests she found deep, applicable truth in the material that went way beyond typical positive thinking.
Then there's Marianne Williamson, another major voice in the modern spiritual landscape. She describes Seth as one of her first metaphysical teachers and a constant source of knowledge and inspiration.
And this is significant because it shows the material acting as a primary source. Feeding the wellspring of ideas for other teachers who then went on to influence vast audiences.
Right. It wasn't just impacting direct readers. It was shaping the thinking of those who would become influential figures themselves.
Exactly.
And even Deepak Chopra, MD, known for bridging Western medicine and Eastern wisdom, he's mentioned. His view is that the books present a useful alternate map of reality and a new diagram of the psyche, calling the material useful to all explorers of consciousness.
Chopra's perspective is particularly interesting, I think, because he's approaching it from a medical and scientific background. He's framing it not just as a spiritual text, but as a sophisticated intellectual and psychological model, a different way of understanding the human mind, consciousness, and its relationship to existence.
And then there's Shakti Gawain, author of the massively popular book Creative Visualization. She provides a really direct link, stating clearly that Seth's teachings were an important influence and one of the initial inspirations for her seminal work.
Now, this is a fantastic, clear, tangible example of how a core Sethian concept, that radical idea that imagination, thought, belief directly shape reality, was directly translated and popularized into a widely practiced technique.
Yeah, creative visualization is huge.
Exactly. Gawain's work brought the concept of consciously using mental imagery to create change into the mainstream, and it shows a clear lineage straight from Seth to a fundamental practice in personal growth today.
So these aren't just casual name drops.
Yeah.
These endorsements really pull the material out of any perceived esoteric fringe and position it as a central, enduring influence on personal growth, consciousness studies, and metaphysical thought over the last, 50-plus years. It clearly has significant staying power.
Absolutely. The material has demonstrably shaped the conversation and trajectory of many fields related to human potential and consciousness for decades. Its influence runs deep, no question.
Now, navigating this material can seem a bit daunting because it's just so incredibly vast. But one thing our sources emphasize is that there's a structured approach to it, both in the material itself and in how this dive is organized for you, the listener.
That's right. The structure of the information we're drawing from is designed to guide the intellectually curious listener, aiming for both a deep philosophical understanding and, crucially, practical application. It's intended to be a progressive journey through the ideas.
It's even noted that within the Sethian canon itself, the books seem to follow an intentional sequence, almost like a curriculum building on itself.
Yeah, there's definitely a pedagogical logic suggested there. It seems to start with the fundamental metaphysics, the what is reality and why is it that way, in foundational books like Seth Speaks. Then it moves into the practical individual application, how do I use this, in texts like The Nature of Personal Reality.
That makes sense.
And finally, it expands to more complex concepts of collective reality, deeper dives into the nature of consciousness, and advanced metaphysics in later books like The Individual and the Nature of Mass Events and the Unknown Reality.
That kind of progression makes so much sense, doesn't it? You build a solid foundation before you try to tackle the most abstract or advanced ideas. It helps prevent that feeling of just being completely overwhelmed.
Exactly. It's structured to maximize comprehension by building understanding step by step. And this deep dive is following that logic, structured into several key areas to help you navigate it effectively.
Okay, so we'll start by laying the philosophical groundwork, the core worldview. Then we'll move into the actionable principle derived from that worldview.
Right.
After that, we'll explore the practical toolkit Seth provides for applying these ideas in your life. And finally, we'll look at some real-world examples and case studies of how these principles have been put into action.
And understanding this structure is valuable for you, the listener, because it provides a roadmap. You're not just getting random ideas thrown at you. You're seeing how they fit together into a cohesive, logically flowing system.
Okay, so let's dive into that foundational groundwork. The Sethian worldview, the foundational pillars. This is where we really get into the underlying structure of reality as Seth presents it.
Precisely. Before you can effectively apply any principles or tools, you really need to grasp the fundamental mechanics of reality, as Seth describes them. As you said, this isn't just simple positive thinking. It's based on a deep philosophical system.
And the sources list 4 foundational pillars that are described as completely interdependent. You really can't understand one in isolation. They form a tightly woven system.
That interconnectedness is absolutely key. They aren't a hierarchy, more like a unified model.
Pillar number 1, and maybe the most central and widely known tenet: consciousness as the architect of reality.
You create your own reality. Now, in the Sethian system, this isn't presented as, a motivational slogan or a metaphor. It's framed as a fundamental law of existence, something as intrinsic to the universe as physical laws like gravity or electromagnetism.
So it's not just that consciousness perceives reality, but that it's the very stuff reality is made of. Is that the idea?
Yes, that's the radical assertion. Consciousness is seen as the primary underlying substance of everything.
Yeah.
The physical world, matter itself, is its manifestation. It's the form that conscious energy takes.
Wow. Okay, so if that's the case, how does this creation process actually work? How does it happen?
The mechanism, according to Seth, is through our individual and collective beliefs, thoughts, expectations, and emotions. These aren't just internal events. They're described as energetic tools, the forces that shape this fundamental conscious substance into the tangible physical experience we perceive.
Right.
The sources include Seth's quote stating the world is a physical materialization of the inner selves which you have formed.
The inner self is involved in this creation then.
Yes. The deeper non-physical part of you, the inner self, is said to project a kind of energetic blueprint or pattern. Then, your conscious and unconscious focus, where you place your attention and the energy you put into your thoughts and beliefs, essentially fills in that blueprint, causing it to condense and manifest physically in your environment and experience.
The implication is pretty stark and powerful then.
Yeah.
If you want to change your outer world, your physical circumstances, you must change your inner patterns, the thoughts, beliefs, expectations that are projecting it.
Exactly. As Seth puts it with striking simplicity, you get what you concentrate upon. There is no other main rule. This is presented as the core operating principle that governs manifestation in this reality.
This is such a radical departure from the conventional materialistic view that reality is fixed and external, and we are largely passive observers or, products of our environment. How does this shift the fundamental idea of cause and effect?
Well, in the conventional view, cause is often seen as external. Something outside of you happens, like a job loss, an illness, a meeting, and that causes an effect within you or in your life.
Sure, standard view.
In the Sethian model, the primary cause is internal. Your consciousness, operating through belief and focus, is the fundamental cause, and the external reality you experience is the effect. It's a complete inside-out model.
That is a massive shift in perspective, and it definitely brings up the whole idea of personal responsibility, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, but it's crucial to understand that within this framework, responsibility is presented as empowerment, not blame.
Okay.
If you are the one creating your reality through your inner state, then you are not fundamentally a victim of circumstances. You have the inherent power, whether you're aware of it or not, to change those circumstances by changing the inner patterns that are creating them. It gives you ultimate agency over your experience.
Could we use maybe a simple analogy to make that clearer, like thinking about building something, maybe?
Okay, yeah, let's try that. Imagine the inner self projects the overarching architectural blueprint for your life experience, the overall design, your potential capabilities.
Right.
Your beliefs are like the building materials and tools available, the wood, the bricks, the type of paint, the hammer, the nails.
Hmm.
Your conscious and unconscious focus is the energy of the builders actually constructing the house according to that plan, using those materials. To change the house you're building, you don't try to tear down the walls from the outside after they're built. You change the blueprint, you select different materials, and you direct the energy of the construction from within.
That analogy really helps ground the concept. So, what does this imply about things you might currently see as fixed, unchangeable, or totally beyond your control in your life?
It implies they're only fixed because your underlying beliefs and focus patterns are fixed or, often, unconscious. If those core inner patterns change, the physical manifestation must, eventually, change to align with the new internal state. It suggests that even seemingly solid, immutable aspects of reality are, at their root, concentrations of consciousness held in place by belief and energy.
Okay, so that's pillar one. Consciousness creates reality. Powerful stuff. Pillar number two challenges our most basic sense of who we even are. The nature of the self, multidimensional.
Yeah, this directly challenges the conventional idea that you are just the single, isolated personality or ego that you experience during your waking day. Seth describes the self as something far more vast and complex, a multidimensional gestalt or entity.
A gestalt, what does that term mean here exactly?
It means a unified whole that is perceived as greater than the sum of its individual parts. The sources break down this larger self into several key components.
Okay, first there's the entity, or whole self, or sometimes called the oversoul.
This is the largest, most encompassing aspect. It represents the complete identity, the total sum of consciousness to which your current individual awareness belongs. It's described as a gestalt of all of its manifestations across probable realities and what we think of as time, your current personality, past life personalities, even probable selves. It's seen as the ultimate source of your individual being, just vast and multifaceted.
Then there's the inner self, or inner ego.
This is a deeper, non-physical part of your identity that is intimately aware of the entire entity in all its expressions, including the history of all its reincarnational selves. Seth actually calls it the master psychologist and architect.
Master psychologist and architect.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the part of you that maintains the energetic blueprint for your physical body and your immediate environment, constantly projecting the foundation of your reality based on your inner state.
And how does this master architect communicate with the part of us we're usually conscious of, the everyday self?
Through subtle, often non-rational means. Intuition, insights received in dreams, that quiet inner voice or knowing that can be so easily overlooked amidst the ego's chatter. It's constantly trying to guide the outer self, to offer wisdom and steer towards greater value fulfillment. But the outer ego often isn't really attuned to its messages.
Which brings us to the outer ego. That's the part we identify with most directly. The I, we think of ourselves as being day to day.
Precisely. That's your familiar waking consciousness. Its function is crucial but limited in scope compared to the whole self. Its primary role is to focus attention, make choices within the context of physical reality, and direct energy within that physical framework. It's necessary for navigating the physical world, absolutely, but it's only one piece of the puzzle.
The analogy given in the source is really helpful here. The outer ego is like the captain of the ship, but the inner self is the entire crew in the ocean itself.
That analogy beautifully captures it, doesn't it? It highlights the ego's necessary role in steering and making decisions in the moment, but also its complete dependence on the vast intelligence, resources, and power of the inner self and the entity. The ego is a vital component, but it is not the totality of who you are.
And then there's the concept that can really stretch the mind. Probable selves.
Ah, yes. This idea is that for every choice you make in this reality, there were infinite other choices you could have made. Seth asserts that these unchosen paths aren't simply discarded possibilities. They are lived out by equally valid probable selves existing in other simultaneous systems of reality.
That sounds strikingly similar to some interpretations in quantum physics, like the many worlds interpretation suggesting branching possibilities.
It does, and the sources note this fascinating resemblance. It proposes a universe where every potential action you could have taken, you did take, in some probable reality. It's like consciousness, exploring every potential facet of experience simultaneously.
Wow, okay. How does this complex, layered model change your understanding of who you are at a fundamental level?
It fundamentally shifts your identity. From thinking of yourself as a small, isolated, fragile ego with just one lifespan, to seeing yourself as a vast, multidimensional being, a point of awareness connected to a much larger, eternal identity. Your current personality, with its history and circumstances, is just one expression, one unique facet of a much larger whole self or entity that is experiencing reality through countless perspectives.
So what's the relationship then between these different parts of the self? How do they interact?
Well, you can think of the outer ego as a highly focused, localized lens or projection of the inner self, operating specifically within the physical reality system. The inner self acts as the essential bridge, connecting the outer ego's physical experience back to the vast wisdom, energy, and context of the entire entity. The entity is the source, the root from which all these diverse expressions, including your current self, spring. The goal, really, in this framework is for the outer ego to learn to consciously cooperate with the inner self, which holds a far vaster perspective and greater wisdom.
And why might the inner self be called a master architect specifically?
Because it's operating from a deeper level of reality awareness. It's involved in maintaining the energetic blueprint for your physical form itself, your body. And it constantly projects the template for your immediate physical environment based on the beliefs and focused energy it receives from the outer ego, combined with its own deeper knowledge and purpose from the entity.
And the implications of probable selves. Does that idea lessen the weight of choice in this reality, or does it somehow make every choice infinitely significant? It feels like it could go either way.
It really can be seen both ways, can't it? From the perspective of the vast entity, which is experiencing all probabilities, perhaps no choice is definitively wrong because experience and value are gained from every single path explored. But from the perspective of your conscious awareness in this reality now, every conscious decision is infinitely significant because it actively creates new branching probabilities and adds a unique thread to the tapestry of the entity's overall experience. It emphasizes the immense creative power embedded in each moment of conscious decision.
All right, that's two foundational pillars. Consciousness as the architect and the multidimensional self. Let's move to pillar number 3, which is deeply connected to the second. The fabric of existence, time, space, and probable realities.
Given the idea of a multidimensional self experiencing countless realities simultaneously, the conventional rigid idea of linear time and a single fixed space simply doesn't adequately describe the full picture, according to Seth.
So, linear time, the familiar progression from past to present to future, is fundamentally challenged.
It's described by Seth as a useful but ultimately illusory camouflage. We perceive time as moving linearly within this specific physical system, primarily because it allows us to experience cause and effect in a sequential manner, which is necessary for our form of physical existence.
But the deeper underlying reality is different.
The deeper truth, according to Seth, is that all time is simultaneous. The past, the present, and what we think of as the future all exist at once in what he calls a spacious present.
All moments existing simultaneously. That's really quite difficult to fully grasp intuitively, isn't it?
It is a complex concept, no doubt, but accepting it fundamentally dismantles the idea of a fixed past that absolutely determines the present, or a predetermined future you're passively heading towards. If all moments exist now, then they are all to some degree accessible and, crucially, mutable from the point of power that is your consciousness in the present.
How could you possibly change the past if it's already happened? That seems paradoxical.
It's not about rewriting history in a way others would perceive, necessarily. It's more about changing your present relationship to that past moment. If the past exists now, energetically, then your current perspective, your present understanding, your emotional state, and your belief about that past event influences its energetic reality and its impact in the spacious present. Seth actually provides a technique for experientially working with this idea, which we'll touch on later in the toolkit section.
Okay, simultaneous time. And interwoven with this is the idea of multiple realities.
Yes, the universe is not seen as a single, monolithic physical world. It's presented as an infinite array of probable realities, each equally valid in its existence. Some are physical, some are mental or spiritual, and they each operate under their own unique sets of organizing principles or laws. Our physical world is just one specific frequency or framework within this vast spectrum of existence.
And these coordination points that are mentioned that connect them.
These are described as energetic intersections or areas of overlap between different realities or dimensions. They are presented as potential energetic funnels or doorways through which consciousness and energy can flow between different systems. Seth suggests they might be perceived in moments of intense intuition, deep creative states, profound déjà vu, or powerful synchronicities, those moments where reality feels unusually porous or connected.
This pillar is definitely the most mind-bending for the conventional mind. Can you maybe use another analogy to help visualize simultaneous time? It's tricky.
Let's see. Think of it like a finished film reel or maybe a digital video file. All the scenes, from the beginning to the end, exist on the reel or in the file simultaneously.
Okay.
When you watch it, you experience the scenes linearly, in sequence, creating the illusion of time passing. But you could also skip to any scene, pause it, rewind, fast forward your interaction. Your consciousness in the present can access any point in the story that already exists. The present moment is like the playback head on the projector or the play cursor on the video file. It's where the experience is focused, but all the data exists all at once.
That helps visualize it a bit better. And how does this framework change the concepts of learning from the past or planning for the future?
Well, it suggests that learning from the past isn't just about recalling fixed events, but about actively accessing the energetic imprints of those moments from the present and reinterpreting them through your current understanding and emotional state, thereby transforming their impact and meaning now. And planning for the future isn't about trying to predict or control a fixed path, but about actively setting energetic templates and desired probabilities from the powerful vantage point of the present moment, knowing that the future, which exists as potential now, is responsive to your current focus, belief, and expectation.
And the idea of infinite realities, what does that imply for the concept of possibility itself?
It implies that possibility is literally infinite. There is no limit to the forms consciousness can take, the experiences it can have, or the realities it can create and explore. Every potential reality that can be conceived in some form exists somewhere within the vastness of all that is.
Which brings us nicely to pillar number 4, and arguably the most profound, the prime mover all that is and the nature of divinity.
Seth's concept of God, or divinity, is quite different from many traditional religious concepts. It's not presented as an external anthropomorphic figure sitting in judgment, for instance.
It's described simply as all that is.
Yes, the ultimate overarching gestalt of consciousness from which absolutely everything springs, all realities, all dimensions, all individual identities, all matter, all energy. It's seen as an infinitely creative, multidimensional intelligence that encompasses everything that is, was, or ever could be.
And its primary motivation for this infinite creation, what drives it?
The desire to know itself. This is presented as the fundamental driving creative impulse behind all existence.
And it achieves that self-knowledge by constantly creating what exactly?
By constantly creating new versions of itself, new souls, new realities, new experiences, new perspectives. It is exploring its own infinite potential, its own nature, through every possible avenue of consciousness and experience within this vast, interconnected universe.
And the profound implication for us as individuals, what does that mean for me?
That every individual consciousness, every you, is not separate from this ultimate source, but is a unique, valid, and cherished portion of all that is. You are not merely created by divinity, you are an expression of it. You are a divine co-creator, an integral part of the ultimate creative intelligence experiencing itself.
What does it truly mean, though, to be a unique portion of this ultimate creative intelligence?
It means you inherently carry within you the same fundamental creative potential, the same intelligence, the same drive for value fulfillment, and the same inherent worth as the source itself. You are not flawed at your core. You are a unique and necessary perspective through which the ultimate intelligence is exploring reality. It provides a bedrock understanding of inherent value and connection.
And how does this framework make sense of the vast diversity of experience in the universe, including things like suffering and difficulty?
Well, from this perspective, all that is exploring all possibilities of being and experience, because knowing itself means understanding every potential facet of consciousness, from the most joyful to the most challenging. Diversity isn't a problem. It's a necessary expression of infinite potential. Difficult experiences, while intensely real and challenging from the ego's perspective, are viewed from the level of the entity as valuable points of intense perception and value fulfillment necessary experiences for the whole to fully know itself. It's a universe driven by the exploration of experience, not by judgment.
And tying this back to the very first pillar, if you are a unique portion of all that is, the ultimate creative intelligence, then it follows logically that your consciousness would possess the inherent power to create reality. It's not a power granted or borrowed, it's the very nature of your being.
Precisely. You can see how these pillars aren't just separate ideas, but form a perfectly interconnected, logically consistent system. If you are a part of all that is, your consciousness is fundamentally creative. If your consciousness is creative, then the self doing the creating must be more than just the limited ego leading to the multidimensional self. And if the self is multidimensional, existing across probabilities and lifetimes, then linear time is insufficient to describe reality, requiring the concept of the spacious present. They build upon and support each other beautifully.
It's a lot to absorb, definitely, but seeing how they interlock makes the overall system feel much more coherent. These four pillars truly form a tightly woven fabric of reality, as Seth presents it.
Yes, you really can't fully understand the implications of one without the context of the others. Engaging with any part of this framework inevitably leads you to grapple with the whole underlying system.
Okay, we've explored that profound foundational worldview. Now, let's move to how this abstract understanding translates into the practicalities of daily life. This brings us to the core principles of creative living. This framework isn't meant to be just an interesting philosophical concept. It's clearly meant to be lived, right?
Exactly. These principles distill the worldview into actionable guidance for navigating your daily experience, your relationships, your challenges, your goals.
Principle 1 is a revisit of that foundational law, but now framed as an operating principle. You create your own reality.
Yes, it moves from a description of reality to the central operating principle of your life. It's a moment-to-moment practice of consciously understanding that your beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and expectations are directly and continuously shaping your physical experience.
And this places the responsibility squarely on the shoulders of the individual.
Which, again, in this framework is seen as the source of immense empowerment, not a burden of blame. If you are the active creator, then the ultimate power to change your circumstances lies within you, regardless of external appearances.
How challenging is it for people, though, to truly accept and integrate that level of personal responsibility? It feels huge.
Hugely challenging. Our culture often reinforces beliefs that we are primarily products of our environment, our past, or external forces. Accepting full responsibility for creating your reality means letting go of the comfort, however small, of blaming outside factors. But in return, you gain ultimate agency over your experience.
You see this resistance play out constantly in everyday life, people feeling powerless over their job situation, their health, their relationships, even global events.
Absolutely. The Sethian view doesn't deny the appearance of external challenges, but it asserts that the energy and form these challenges take in your experience are fundamentally organized and drawn to you by your internal state, your beliefs and focus. Even in mass events, it's seen as the materialization of powerful collective beliefs and agreements, which individuals are still contributing to and experiencing based on their own internal state.
Okay, principle 2. The point of power is in the present.
This principle is absolutely key to unlocking the creative ability described in Principle 1. It asserts that all your creative power, all your ability to influence reality, is focused entirely in the now.
So the past isn't fixed and determining my present. It doesn't lock me in.
Not as a rigid block of events that dictate what must happen now. The past, existing simultaneously, is constantly being re-perceived, reinterpreted, and its energetic impact on you is shaped from the powerful vantage point of the present moment. And the future isn't a predetermined path. It is actively being formed by the choices, the beliefs, the expectations, and the energy you're generating now.
This makes the present moment the only true point where you have leverage for action and change. That's quite a focus.
Exactly. Dwelling with emotional intensity on past regrets or future anxieties, while incredibly common, actually dilutes your creative power in the present. The energy for creation is always available, but only in the now.
What would it really look like, practically, to live fully inhabiting the creative power of the present moment?
Well, it would involve a state of conscious awareness where you are fully present, observant of your inner state, your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, without being lost in them. You would be deliberately directing your focus and energy towards what you consciously want to create or experience, rather than automatically reacting to what you perceive as the already created reality or being swept away by past conditioning or future fears.
Principle 3. Beliefs dictate experience, and emotions are the guide.
This reinforces Pillar 1 at a very practical level. Your perceived reality is described as a perfect, objective mirror of your deepest beliefs, many of which operate unconsciously just below your conscious awareness. You simply accept them as fundamental truths about yourself and the world.
And the connection to emotions here, how do they fit in?
Emotions are seen as the direct energetic consequence of those beliefs. They aren't random occurrences. If you hold a belief like I am fundamentally unsafe, you will generate feelings of fear and anxiety. If you hold a belief like I am inherently capable and worthy, you will generate feelings of confidence and joy.
So emotions are the infallible guide. They point the way.
Precisely. Seth calls them your internal signal system. When you experience a persistent negative emotion, fear, frustration, anger, sadness, it's not just a feeling, it's a direct signpost pointing you to the underlying limiting belief that is generating that feeling and consequently shaping your experience. You can use the emotion like a detective tool to uncover the hidden assumption.
Why are unconscious beliefs so particularly powerful in creating reality? Why those hidden ones?
Because they operate outside of conscious scrutiny. You're not examining them, questioning them, or challenging them. They just feel like the way things are. So you automatically and continuously broadcast them energetically, and reality relentlessly organizes itself to match them.
How can someone start to become more aware of these often hidden beliefs then?
By paying very close attention to recurring patterns in your life and your consistent emotional states. If you keep experiencing similar difficulties in a specific area, or if you're constantly feeling a certain way, ask yourself, what must I fundamentally believe about myself, this area of life, or the world, for this to be my consistent experience and feeling? The emotion tracing technique we'll discuss later is specifically designed for this kind of excavation.
Okay. Principle 4. The inner senses are your natural guides.
This principle suggests we have more ways of perceiving reality than just the standard 5 physical senses we rely on.
Absolutely. Seth proposes that we are innately equipped with inner senses, such as intuition, telepathy, clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, clairaudience, clear hearing, clairsentience, clear feeling, and even the ability to directly perceive the vitality or consciousness within all things, even seemingly inanimate objects. But in our modern culture, these seem largely dormant or ignored, don't they?
Yes, they are often suppressed or dismissed as mere imagination or coincidence. But developing these inner senses is presented as key to human evolution and consciousness expansion, allowing us to perceive deeper dimensions of reality, receive communication and guidance directly from the inner self, and gain information not accessible through purely physical means.
What might intuition specifically feel like when you're paying attention? How would you recognize it?
It's often described as a sudden strong knowing, a gut feeling, a powerful hunch, a distinct inner nudge, or maybe clear image, thought, or feeling that arrives seemingly from outside your logical thought process. It's a form of direct cognition that bypasses the step-by-step analysis of the rational mind.
How can someone start paying attention to these subtler senses? What's a practical step?
By simply acknowledging those subtle nudges when they occur. When you have an impulse that feels positive and spontaneous, maybe to call a certain friend, take a different route home, explore a creative idea, just pay attention to it. Acting on those positive impulses, even small ones, is said to strengthen the connection and make the inner voice clearer over time. Keeping a journal of intuitive hits and their outcomes can also be very insightful.
So those times you've had a gut feeling about something, this system says that's actually a valid form of perception, not just randomness.
Exactly. It's not just a vague feeling. It's information being processed and presented to your conscious mind from a deeper level of your being.
Okay. Principle 5. Dreams are a gateway to the greater self.
Seth really challenges the conventional psychological view that dreams are just random firings of the brain or symbolic processing of waking events.
Yeah, the meaningless psychic refuse idea.
Right. They're presented not as that, but as valid, conscious experiences occurring in other dimensions of reality or within the spacious present. The dream state is described as a primary arena for communication with the inner self, other probable selves, and for exploring potential realities.
So the dream state is more than just rest. It's an active arena, a place where things happen.
An incredibly active and significant one, according to Seth. It's described as a workshop, a laboratory for problem solving, exploring probable outcomes, receiving profound insights and healing, and directly communicating with the deeper, wiser parts of your identity.
And the practice here is learning to remember and work with your dreams consciously.
It's presented as fundamental for consciousness expansion according to this system. Learning to recall, record, and work with your dreams consciously is key to accessing this valuable information channel.
What kind of communication or activity might actually happen in dreams then? What could you expect?
Oh, it can range hugely. From symbolic messages that require interpretation to direct insights into waking problems, creative inspiration, guidance from the inner self about your beliefs or path, previews of potential future probabilities, or even healing work being done on physical or psychological issues. You might go to sleep with a question and wake up with the answer having appeared clearly in a dream.
Fascinating. Okay, principle 6. The magical approach to life.
This is contrasted quite strongly with the rational linear approach most of us are trained in and tend to default to.
Yes. The rational approach relies heavily on logic, linear planning, analysis, conscious control. It's necessary for functioning in physical reality, of course. But Seth argues that relying solely on it can stifle creativity, block intuitive guidance, and create unnecessary rigidity and stress. And the magical approach is...
It's about cultivating a different way of interacting with reality, trusting spontaneity, paying attention to and acting on positive intuitive impulses, even when they don't make logical sense to the ego, allowing yourself to be guided by inspiration and inner knowing rather than just rigid plans.
Why is it so hard for us, though, in our goal-oriented, planning-heavy culture, to trust spontaneity? It feels counterintuitive.
Because it feels uncertain and uncontrollable to the rational mind, which craves predictability and structure. Spontaneity feels risky, inefficient maybe. But Seth suggests that living in tune with your natural inner rhythms, allowing intuition and spontaneous impulses to guide your actions, allows for the highest expression of your creativity and often leads to more joyful, synchronistic, and effective outcomes than trying to force things through purely linear, rational means.
Can you think of examples?
Sure. Think about times you've had unexpected inspiration strike out of the blue, or a creative project just flowed effortlessly when you weren't trying too hard, or a fortunate coincidence occurred because you followed some non-rational impulse, like deciding to walk down a different street.
Principle 7. Health is a natural state of being.
This principle states quite directly that physical health is the body's natural inclination, and illness is seen as a physical manifestation of underlying negative beliefs, fears, or unresolved emotional or psychological conflicts.
This is often a challenging principle for people, and it's essential to frame it correctly within the Sethian context, right? It's not about blaming someone for being sick.
Absolutely not. It's crucial to understand it's not about blame. It's about understanding the deep, intricate, energetic connection between our inner state, our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, and their eventual physical manifestation, including the state of the body.
So the body has an innate drive towards wellness, but our beliefs can interfere with that.
Precisely. The physical body has an incredible innate intelligence and drive towards health and equilibrium. But chronic limiting beliefs, suppressed powerful emotions, or unresolved psychological conflicts create persistent energetic patterns that interfere with this natural tendency, eventually condensing and manifesting as physical symptoms or illness.
So the key to healing within this framework involves addressing those inner patterns, not just the physical symptoms.
According to the Seth Material, yes. True healing involves identifying and changing the underlying thought patterns, emotional blocks, or limiting beliefs that contributed to creating the illness in the first place. Physical treatments can certainly be useful for addressing symptoms, but lasting change requires working on the internal cause. It's a fundamental inside-out approach to wellness.
And finally, principle 8. You are an eternal, multidimensional being.
This principle encourages perhaps the most fundamental shift in self-identity possible.
From identifying solely with the temporary, vulnerable ego,
to identifying with the eternal, powerful, and unconditionally loved entity or soul that you truly are. This larger identity is presented as fundamentally safe, secure, and indestructible, existing beyond the limitations and fears of the physical body and this specific lifetime.
And the benefit of consciously connecting with this larger identity, what does that do for you?
It provides a profound bedrock of self-worth, confidence, and courage. Recognizing that your true essence transcends the physical body and the ups and downs of this single lifetime frees you from many of the deepest, most pervasive fears. The fear of not being enough, the fear of loss, the fear of death itself. This allows you to engage with life's challenges and explore your potential with far greater joy, freedom, and less constriction.
Why is identifying solely with the ego so limiting in Seth's view? What's the drawback?
Because the ego, though vital for navigating physical reality, is only consciously aware of a tiny, localized slice of your total reality, your total identity, and your total potential. It's like believing the character you're playing in one scene of a vast play is the totality of who you are. It cuts you off from your inherent power, wisdom, creativity, and your deep connection to all that is. Consciously connecting with that sense of eternal self can utterly transform your perspective on challenges, setbacks, loss, and even death, seeing them as experiences within a much larger ongoing journey of your consciousness.
Okay, these 8 principles, while distinct, are really deeply interconnected and derive directly from those 4 foundational pillars we talked about. They provide a pretty comprehensive framework for applying the worldview to the practical, daily experience of living your life.
Exactly. And it's clear this system is very action-oriented. It's not just about understanding these ideas intellectually, but about living them. Which brings us neatly to the practical side. The Sethian toolkit practical application.
Right, the how-to.
Exactly. Seth provides a wide array of exercises and techniques designed to help you translate the philosophical understanding and the principles into tangible, conscious action in your life. You can really frame it as a comprehensive toolkit for manifesting change.
And the sources outline tools for both individual application and, interestingly, for groups or teams as well. Let's start with the individual cultivating personal reality. The foundational work seems to be mastering beliefs and emotions, linking back directly to principles 1, 3, and 7.
This is indeed presented as perhaps the most critical area to work on because, as we've emphasized, beliefs are seen as the literal architects of your reality. If you don't work there, not much changes.
The first specific tool mentioned is the belief listing exercise. How does that work?
This is a direct, conscious method. You basically sit down and dedicate time to writing out your beliefs about specific, important areas of your life. You might list everything that comes to mind about money, or your physical body, or relationships, or your own capabilities and potential. The primary purpose is to uncover the often unconscious assumptions you hold, bringing them out of the background and into your conscious awareness where you can actually examine them.
And paying close attention to contradictions within those lists seems important.
Crucially important. Seth emphasizes that contradictory beliefs are major energetic blocks. If you consciously affirm, "I deserve a loving relationship," but unconsciously hold the belief I am fundamentally unlovable, or maybe relationships always end in pain, those conflicting beliefs create internal friction that blocks the manifestation of the desired outcome. Identifying these contradictions is the absolute first step to resolving them.
Then there's the method for when you can't intellectually pinpoint the belief, emotion tracing.
Right, this is a powerful technique that uses your body's signal system, your emotions, as the guide. When you experience a strong, persistent negative emotion, fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, guilt, instead of trying to push it away or distract yourself, you allow yourself to feel it fully without judgment, and then you ask yourself, what core belief must I be holding about myself, this situation, or life in general to be feeling this way?
Like writing the emotion back to its source belief.
Yes, you follow that energetic thread. The emotion is the indicator, the clue, and by tracing it back, you can often uncover the fundamental underlying belief or assumption that spawned it. This can lead to really profound moments of self-revelation, aha moments.
Okay, so once you'd identified a limiting belief, how do you actually go about changing it? The sources describe the 3-pronged method for altering beliefs.
Yes, this technique is designed to engage your mind, emotion, and imagination together for maximum effect. Step 1. You deliberately generate the emotion that is the opposite of the feeling the old belief produced. So if the old belief caused anxiety, you intentionally evoke feelings of security, confidence, or peace.
Step 2. You vividly visualize the desired outcome that the new preferred belief would create.
Exactly. Use your imagination to create a rich, detailed mental picture of the reality you want to experience, making it feel as real as possible in your mind. Sensory details help.
And step 3. You consciously assure yourself that the old belief is just an idea.
This is the cognitive part, reminding yourself that the limiting belief is not an inherent truth about reality or about you, but simply a thought form or assumption you adopted at some point. This combined approach of feeling the new state, visualizing the new reality, and consciously disarming the old belief is intended to weaken the old pattern and install the new one energetically.
Natural self-hypnosis and affirmations are also included in this toolkit section.
Right. Seth describes natural self-hypnosis not as some deep trance state, but simply as a state of focused, undivided attention. You use this state, maybe for 5-10 minutes daily, to concentrate intensely on a single positive statement, an affirmation that embodies your desired belief. The key is to repeat the statement and actively try to feel the reality of it as you say it.
And there's a crucial caution with this, isn't there? Something important to remember.
Absolutely. Seth stresses doing the affirmation with confidence and focus, and then, importantly, forgetting about it for the rest of your day. If you spend your time worrying about whether the affirmation is working or checking for results constantly, you are reinforcing the underlying belief in lack or doubt, which completely cancels out the positive focus you just created.
Like planting a seed and digging it up every 5 minutes.
Exactly. You plant the seed, water it with positive focus and feeling, and then trust it will grow, rather than digging it up constantly to check for roots.
Addressing unworthiness is mentioned specifically in the source table as a targeted application of this belief work.
Yes, that's a great example. This is applying these techniques, listing, tracing, altering beliefs specifically to the deeply ingrained beliefs people often hold about not being good enough, not deserving love or success. It's about uncovering those specific beliefs and consciously replacing them with a recognition of your inherent worth, capabilities, and your fundamental connection to all that is, linking back to Principle 8.
Okay, moving on to activating the point of power, which links directly to Principle 2, focusing your creative energy in the present moment.
These exercises are designed to help you experientially grasp and viscerally feel that your creative agency resides now, not in some fixed past or distant future.
One is simply called the point of power practice. Sounds straightforward.
It's a deceptively simple meditation, actually. You sit quietly, eyes open, just looking at your surroundings, and focus intensely on the feeling that this exact moment, right now, is the absolute point of power in creation. It's from this now that you have the ability to influence probabilities and future outcomes. The goal is to deeply internalize that feeling of present agency.
And then there's the more complex and perhaps more controversial technique, altering the past.
Right, this involves taking a memory of a past event that is disturbing or painful and using intense emotional focus and visualization, vividly imagining that event being replaced by a more beneficial, positive, probable event. You repeat this exercise with feeling.
How does Seth explain this isn't just self-delusion or denial? Because it sounds a bit like rewriting history.
His explanation draws directly on the concept of simultaneous time and probable realities. He suggests that by performing this exercise with strong intent and emotion, you are consciously aligning your present consciousness with a probable past stream where a more positive version of the event did occur. This act, performed from your point of power in the present, is said to change the energetic foundation that the original negative memory was holding in your current reality, thereby freeing you from its lingering negative effects and influence. It's working with the malleable nature of time experientially from the inside.
Acting on new beliefs is also mentioned in the tables as a related tool.
Yes, this is about providing symbolic, physical reinforcement for a new belief you're cultivating. If you're working on a belief in abundance, for instance, it might involve taking small, intentional physical actions that embody that feeling, like setting aside a small amount of money with the feeling of gratitude and abundance, or perhaps purchasing something small that symbolizes prosperity, done with the feeling that you are already abundant. It's about signaling your new internal state to the physical reality framework through physical action.
Next category, developing inner guidance, connecting strongly to principles 4 and 5, opening those channels to the inner self and broader reality.
Yes, this is about consciously attuning your awareness to receive information and guidance from sources beyond the 5 physical senses and the purely rational mind.
A key foundational exercise here is called psychological time, or psi time.
This is presented as the core practice for developing the inner senses. You find a quiet place, sit or lie down comfortably, and close your eyes. The instruction is to consciously pretend that your inner world, the world of thoughts, feelings, images, sounds, intuitions, is just as real, valid, and rich as the physical world you perceive with your eyes open. You consciously endeavor to turn off your focus on external physical input and turn on your receptivity to inner sensory data. The key is to be receptive and completely non-judgmental about whatever arises internally.
And the potential results of practicing psi time regularly.
Well, with consistent practice, individuals report experiencing clear intuition, receiving telepathic or clairvoyant information, gaining deep creative inspiration, or experiencing a feeling of being outside of the constraints of linear time. It's really about retraining your awareness to perceive non-physical data more readily.
Dream journaling and incubation are practical things for working with dreams, linking back to Principle 5.
Essential tools if dreams are a key communication channel, as Seth suggests. Dream journaling is simply keeping a notebook by your bed and writing down absolutely everything you can remember from a dream immediately upon waking before it fades. This practice alone significantly improves recall over time. Dream incubation is the practice of giving yourself a clear suggestion or asking a specific question just before falling asleep with the intention that your dream state will provide insight or a solution.
And for those interested in more conscious exploration of the dream state, there are lucid dreaming and OBE techniques mentioned.
Yes, more advanced practices noted in the sources. Lucid dreaming involves becoming fully conscious and aware within the dream itself, allowing for conscious interaction and exploration. Common techniques include doing reality checks throughout your waking day, asking yourself, am I dreaming right now? And checking if the physical laws of reality hold true with the aim of triggering that questioning awareness while you're actually in a dream. Out-of-body experience, OBE techniques, often involve lying down when drowsy and imagining or feeling the inner self lifting, floating, or separating from the physical body.
Okay, and finally, in the individual toolkit, living the magical approach, linking to Principle 6. This feels less like a discrete exercise and more like cultivating a certain way of being, a different approach to life.
It really is. While there are practices associated with it, the magical approach is fundamentally about integrating spontaneity and intuition into the very fabric of your daily life, moving beyond rigid reliance on purely rational thought processes.
Trusting spontaneity is a key practice here.
It involves actively paying attention to those positive, spontaneous impulses that arise, that sudden urge to call someone you haven't spoken to in ages, to take a different route home for no logical reason, to start sketching or writing something unexpected, to visit a place you hadn't planned to. The practice is to act on them, especially the ones that don't seem strictly rational or part of your planned day. Each time you trust and act on an inner nudge, you strengthen the connection with your inner guidance and reinforce the habit of operating from intuition.
And breaking habitual patterns, what's the purpose of that?
This is designed to help break the mind out of automatic, rigid ways of perceiving and interacting with the world. Seth suggests playful exercises, like looking at a common object, say a cup, and deliberately making up a new, spontaneous sound or name for it in the moment. The point isn't the name itself, but to break the automatic association between the object and its conventional label or function, allowing your consciousness to perceive it freshly, maybe as pure energy or form, rather than through the lens of ingrained habit.
We also saw other techniques mentioned briefly in Table 2 under consciousness expansion, like exploring probable selves or exploring other stations.
Those are indeed examples of the more advanced tools within the toolkit, really pushing the boundaries of perception and identity by imaginatively and experientially exploring alternate life paths you didn't choose, or attempting to consciously shift your point of awareness away from the physical home station to experience the inherent mobility of consciousness.
This really is an incredibly comprehensive toolkit. Let's maybe take a step back and talk about why each exercise category is needed based on the principles we just discussed and the logic behind how they're said to work. It helps tie it all together.
Sure. Well, it all ties back directly to the worldview and principles. If beliefs create reality, as Principle 1 states, then tools for mastering beliefs like listing, tracing, and altering them are absolutely essential because you have to identify and change the architect's blueprint, right?
Right, makes sense.
If the point of power is truly in the present moment, Principle 2, then practices like the point of power practice and even altering the past are needed to anchor your creative energy and focus your agency in the only moment you actually have power, which is right now.
Okay.
If your inner senses and dreams are crucial guides from your greater self, Principles 4 and 5, then techniques like psi time, dream work, and maybe OBE practices become necessary to develop and utilize those perceptual channels and communication lines effectively. And if trusting spontaneity and intuition, the magical approach, Principle 6, is key to dynamic, joyful creation, then practicing trusting impulses and breaking rigid patterns helps you cultivate that flow and flexibility in your life.
And the logic behind combining elements in the tools, like why visualizing with emotion is stressed so much in the three-pronged method for changing beliefs?
Seth emphasizes repeatedly that emotion is the energetic fuel. Visualization or imagination provides the form, the template, the mental picture of what you want to create. But it's the accompanying feeling, the emotional charge, that provides the vital energy and power needed for that mental template to coalesce and manifest in physical reality. Strong feeling is said to accelerate the process significantly.
It definitely sounds like these tools are not a quick fix. They require consistent practice and effort.
Absolutely. Seth repeatedly stresses that these are tools to be used and experimented with over time. They require dedication, consistency, a willingness to look honestly at yourself, which isn't always easy, and the courage to experiment with the perceived boundaries of your own consciousness and reality. They are presented as practical methods for you, the listener, to actively experiment with the principles in your own life and see what happens.
Now, the sources also mention applications for groups or teams, not just individuals. This is really fascinating. How can these principles be applied collectively? It seems very individualistic.
Yes, this section highlights how the Sethian principles are seen as fractal, meaning they scale up. Just as an individual's experience is created by their beliefs and focus, collective experiences, whether in families, organizations, even nations, are seen as the materialization of powerful mass agreements, shared beliefs, and collective focus.
So the same principles apply to the dynamics and outcomes of groups as well.
Precisely. Consciously applying these principles within a team or organizational setting is proposed as a way to significantly influence the collective reality that group experiences, impacting everything from performance and culture to results and innovation.
First is defining a shared reality, which sounds like applying principles 1 and 3, creating reality and beliefs dictate experience, but for a team.
Correct. A team's performance and culture are heavily influenced by its shared beliefs, which are often unspoken or unconscious assumptions about their work, their clients, their capabilities, the market, you name it. Making these shared beliefs conscious is the crucial first step.
And the actionable step here is proposed as the Belief Charter Workshop.
Yes. This is a deliberate process where a team sits down together and explicitly identifies their core collective beliefs. They might answer questions like, what do we collectively believe about our clients? What do we believe about our own strengths and weaknesses? What do we truly believe is possible for this team?
And they write it all down.
Yes, they write these down, identify any limiting or contradictory shared beliefs we believe are always under-resourced, or we believe our competition is just too strong, and then consciously craft powerful, positive, desired replacement beliefs. We are a resourceful and innovative team. We believe our product adds immense value for our clients.
And this becomes a formal charter for the team.
Ideally, it's documented and made visible, serving as a conscious agreement and a guide for the team's collective thought and action going forward. The source gives a really compelling example with a nonprofit fundraising team.
Right, the nonprofit fundraising example. They were struggling with fundraising, which was traced back to a pervasive shared belief within the team. It's hard to ask people for money.
Exactly. By consciously identifying and replacing that limiting belief with one like, we offer people a meaningful opportunity to contribute to a vital cause, and people are happy and eager to give, their entire approach to fundraising shifted internally. They moved from timid asking to confident offering and connecting. This internal shift in the collective belief directly changed their external collective reality. Their fundraising results improved dramatically. It's a clear application of changing a shared belief to change a shared outcome.
Then there's applying the point of power, principle 2, in a team context, specifically in project management.
Just as individuals can get stuck dwelling on past failures or becoming paralyzed by future anxieties, teams can absolutely do the same thing. This tool is about focusing the team's collective creative energy squarely in the now.
And the tool is called the Present Moment Pivot Meeting.
Yes. When a project encounters a significant setback or failure, instead of holding a traditional post-mortem meeting focused on assigning blame or endlessly dissecting what went wrong in the past, the team uses that moment to focus their collective energy forward. The discussion is framed by one powerful, present-focused question. Acknowledging exactly where we are right now with all the current circumstances, what is the single most powerful, creative action we can take right now to move forward effectively?
That immediately dissolves the baggage of the past failure or the fear of the future, doesn't it?
It redirects all the team's collective energy, creativity, and problem-solving ability to construct action in the only moment they have the power to act the present. The tech startup example from the source illustrates this beautifully.
They had a new product launch that received really negative initial feedback, and the team was understandably demoralized and pointing fingers.
Right. Instead of getting stuck in disappointment and blaming, they held a pivot meeting framed by this question. They decided the most powerful action now was to immediately engage directly with their most critical users and collaboratively develop a solution within 48 hours. This immediate, positive, present-focused action completely changed the trajectory, turning initial critics into enthusiastic collaborators. It's a potent example of how shifting collective focus in the present can change a seemingly negative future outcome.
And finally, for teams, harnessing group intuition, applying principles 4 and 6, inner senses, and the magical approach, to team dynamics.
Accessing nonlinear, intuitive insights and spontaneous creative solutions is just as valuable for teams facing complex problems as it is for individuals, maybe even more so sometimes.
The tool here is the group sci-time brainstorm.
In a strategic meeting or brainstorming session, particularly when the rational, logical approaches have been exhausted or feel stuck, the team takes a dedicated period, maybe 15 minutes, of quiet reflection. They hold the problem or question in mind and simply become receptive, non-judgmentally, to spontaneous ideas, images, feelings, or phrases that arise from their collective intuition and deeper awareness.
And they share everything that comes up without immediate critique or judgment.
Yes, exactly. This consciously taps into the collective inner senses of the group and can reveal surprising breakthrough solutions or creative directions that purely linear, logical brainstorming couldn't access. The marketing team example is a perfect illustration of this.
They were completely stuck trying to come up with a name for a new product using traditional methods.
Right. After a period of quiet group receptivity, individual team members shared seemingly disparate, non-rational inputs. Someone got the feeling of the color blue. Another had a sense of calm, another the word harbor. By combining and trusting these intuitive pieces, they arrived at the name Blue Harbor, which perfectly captured the desired feeling and essence of the product in a way logical brainstorming hadn't been able to achieve.
This really shows the potential power of directing collective intention and intuition when approached consciously within a group.
It does. These team applications demonstrate that the Sethian framework isn't just about personal transformation. It can be a practical, powerful methodology for groups and organizations seeking greater creativity, effectiveness, resilience, and positive collective outcomes by working consciously with the underlying principles of reality creation.
So we've covered the genesis of the material, its lasting influence, the structured framework, the core worldview, the principles for daily living, and this extensive practical toolkit for both individuals and teams. Wow. Now let's bring it all together by looking at how these ideas actually play out in real human lives. This brings us to the principles in action, real-world impact.
Yes, the ultimate test of any philosophy or system is its applicability and impact on human experience, isn't it? Does it actually work for people?
And it's important to be clear about the nature of the evidence presented in the sources for this impact, right?
Yes, the sources explicitly state that the evidence is primarily testimonial and anecdotal. There are no formal, peer-reviewed scientific studies on the efficacy of the Seth material presented within the provided documents. The reported power of the material lies in its subjective, experiential impact on the lives of those who engage with it.
And the sources also specifically mention filtering out any unrelated material, like other people or concepts named Seth, to focus exclusively on the Jane Roberts Seth material. That seems like careful handling.
It is an important detail. It confirms that the case studies and testimonials we're discussing are specifically attributed by the individuals themselves to their engagement with the Seth material channeled by Jane Roberts, ensuring we're staying focused precisely on the subject matter of this deep dive.
We already touched on the testimonials from influential figures like Louise, Marianne Williamson, Deepak Chopra, and Shakti Gawain. Briefly revisiting those, it's clear these are well-known individuals in personal growth and consciousness studies who found the material profoundly influential and foundational to their own work and success.
Exactly. These endorsements, from respected figures who have themselves impacted millions, lend significant weight to the idea that the material isn't merely fringe. It's been a central source of inspiration for many widely accepted concepts and practices in the personal development world today.
Now let's look at the archetypal case studies provided in the sources. The first one is the doctoral student's triumph.
Yes, this is a quintessential example illustrating the direct application of two core principles. You create your own reality, Principle 1, and beliefs dictate experience, Principle 3.
Tell us the story again, briefly.
Okay, a doctoral student was experiencing extreme difficulty with their PhD progress. They were consumed by paranoia and the firm belief that their professors were actively conspiring against them, deliberately obstructing their work and preventing them from finishing. They perceived their external reality as one filled with opposition and unfair obstacles.
Sounds stressful.
Extremely. After encountering the Seth material, the student had a profound realization. This perceived reality of obstruction was not an objective external fact, but was being actively created and projected by their own powerful underlying belief that they were being persecuted or held back.
So how did they apply the principles to change the situation? What did they do?
They consciously and deliberately worked to discard that limiting belief in obstruction. They then consciously installed the opposite belief They began affirming and intensely focusing on the belief that their professors were supportive, wanted them to succeed, and were actively helping them towards their promotion. Crucially, they also began acting and feeling as if this new, desired belief were already true, changing their energetic output and expectations.
And the results reported.
According to the account, the external reality shifted to match the internal change. The perceived obstruction vanished completely. They successfully completed their PhD and were promoted to a desirable academic position. It's presented as a powerful, direct example of how changing a deeply held internal belief system can fundamentally transform one's external circumstances and perceived reality.
It really makes the abstract idea of you create your own reality very concrete and practical.
It shows the direct, tangible impact of belief work on one's physical experience and opportunities.
The next case study mentioned is the entrepreneur and healer, often associated with Rick Stack, who is one of the primary compilers and disseminators of the Seth Material.
Yes, this case highlights the application of you create your own reality, Principle 1, dream work, Principle 5, and particularly the magical approach, Principle 6, in a professional and altruistic context.
He specifically credited Seth concepts and, interestingly, dream state practices for his success.
Yes. This suggests he wasn't just using dreams for personal insight or psychological processing, but actively employing them as a tool for creative problem-solving, strategic thinking, and gaining guidance in his professional endeavors. By trusting this intuitive, nonlinear guidance accessed through dreams and inner knowing, he was essentially living the magical approach in his business life, allowing inspiration and spontaneous insights to guide his actions and decisions, even when they might not have seemed strictly logical from a purely rational perspective.
And the results were quite significant, tangible, and had a broad social impact.
Absolutely. He went on to build large-scale, successful social welfare organizations that helped thousands of disabled and disadvantaged individuals find meaningful employment. This case is powerful because it demonstrates that these concepts aren't confined just to personal well-being or spiritual contemplation. They can be applied to drive professional innovation, entrepreneurial success, and create large-scale altruistic outcomes that benefit society as a whole.
The third archetypal case study focuses on the seeker of self-authority.
This case, which seems synthesized from several similar accounts in the sources, illustrates a profound internal transformation, heavily involving the application of nuances. The inner senses are your natural guides, Principle 4, and the recognition that you are an eternal, multidimensional being, Principle 8.
It describes an individual who felt lost and was constantly seeking external answers and validation from others.
Exactly. This person was looking outside themselves for guidance, purpose, and a sense of worth, a very common human experience. As they immerse themselves in the Seth Material, the process is described as activating their latent or suppressed inner senses, their intuition, their inner knowing, perhaps even clairvoyant flashes or insights. This growing connection to their inner guidance led them to a fundamental shift. They stopped seeking external validation and began to trust their own inner self as their true, reliable authority. They learned to discern what felt right to them internally, rather than relying solely on external opinions or doctrines.
Leading to a development of deep and profound trust in themselves. That sounds like a major shift.
It really does. The reported outcome of this process is a shift from a state of confusion, dependency, and seeking external approval to a state of self-authority, inner freedom, and a deep sense of personal responsibility and trust. The transition from feeling like a victim of external circumstances or other people's opinions to recognizing themselves as a conscious creator of their own experience.
This fundamental internal shift, learning to trust your own inner guidance as your ultimate authority, seems like perhaps the most profound outcome reported in these cases.
It could certainly be argued that it is. It represents a fundamental transformation of one's relationship with oneself and with reality, moving from fear, external validation seeking, and perceived powerlessness to trust, inner sovereignty, and the recognition of inherent power and worth. It's huge.
These case studies, while acknowledged as anecdotal, provide compelling examples of how the Sethian framework, when applied, is reported to lead to tangible shifts in personal well-being, professional and creative success, and profound internal and spiritual maturity.
They really bridge the gap between the complex philosophical ideas and the potential for real-world impact on the lives of those who choose to engage with the material and actually put its principles into practice consistently.
We've taken quite a journey in this deep dive, from the unexpected genesis of the Seth material and its lasting influence, through the structured framework, exploring the radical worldview based on consciousness as architect and the multidimensional self, understanding the core principles for creative living, and delving into the practical toolkit for individuals and teams, culminating in these powerful examples of how the principles have played out in real lives. It's been a lot.
The Seth material, as presented in these sources, is indeed a comprehensive, logically consistent metaphysical system, uniquely channeled through Jane Roberts, offering a truly radical worldview where consciousness is the fundamental substance of reality, and each individual is an active, conscious creator of their experience.
It's clearly not a passive philosophy just to think about, but a dynamic invitation to active, conscious participation in shaping your reality.
And the structure of the material itself, moving from worldview to principles to practical toolkit, provides a clear progressive path for anyone seeking to understand and apply these ideas for personal and even collective transformation.
The key principles and tools we discussed: recognizing the point of power in the present, using emotions as guides, developing inner senses and dreams as communication channels, and employing specific exercises for belief work, intuition, and conscious creation. They really form a cohesive strategy for driving this inner-directed change.
And as the array of testimonials and case studies suggests, the true value of the system is seen in its application, leading to reported shifts in everything from personal well-being and physical health to professional success, creative output, and profound spiritual awakening.
The ultimate goal, according to the material, isn't just manifesting external desires like a new car or job, but a far deeper process, an awakening to your true nature.
Recognizing yourself as the powerful, free, eternal co-creator that you fundamentally are, fully responsible for your experience, and an integral, cherished, and inseparable part of the creative fabric of all that is.
You've journeyed through this complex system with us. These ideas certainly challenge many conventional assumptions about reality and identity, but they offer a profound sense of empowerment and potential agency over your life experience.
They really suggest that the limitations you perceive might be far less about external circumstances and far more about the boundaries of your own inner landscape, your beliefs, your focus, your understanding of who you truly are.
So here's a final provocative thought for you to continue mulling over as you reflect on this deep dive. If your inner world truly sculpts your outer world, what unseen belief, operating just below your conscious awareness, might be creating the biggest challenge or limitation in your life right now?
Or perhaps, considering that really mind-bending idea that all time is simultaneous, what forgotten moment or past experience might hold a key to unlocking a greater sense of freedom or potential for you in the present, if viewed from your current point of power and understanding?
Or maybe consider this. If you are, at your core, a unique portion of all that is experiencing and exploring itself, what previously unexplored aspect of divinity, creativity, or experience could you consciously choose to express and explore through your life starting today?
If these ideas resonate with you, the source material itself offers a truly deep well for further exploration. Based on the sources we reviewed, key books like Seth Speaks, The Eternal Validity of the Soul and the Nature of Personal Reality. A Seth book are often recommended as excellent starting points to delve much further into this.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Seth material.